happy to do that. I'll start the recording.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Well, Julie, we're all settled in room. In regards to the round of introductions, if you want to kick us off, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, thanks everyone for joining today. And Jordan, appreciate you making the trip in. This is Julie Wilkinson. I lead the Human Experience platform, which is focused on guest and employee experience for our clients for JLL corporately. And I work closely with Jordan and the rest of the EMS team on implementing new technologies and best practices on behalf of our clients. So we're really excited to be able to share this with you today. We've had great success with EMS on a number of our other large global clients. So we're really excited about this. And then I also have Elaine Schreiber from my team on the line with me. Elaine?
Hi, I'm Elaine Schreiber, and I lead transitions for the Human Experience platform under Julie and help our clients get to their first day to go live.
Thank you, Julie and Elaine. I believe that encompasses everybody who has joined remotely. Susie, if you wouldn't mind in room.
Yeah, Susie Bohasek, I'm the conference center manager, and I have lots of years of experience with EMS. My prior office used it, and I worked there for 15 years. So
great,
we've had
fantastic.
it. So I'm very excited to look at this.
Where was your prior office?
Kirkland's and Olive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
I'm Susan Shields. I'm a CNA, Director of Corporate Services. So the sort of relationship with the conference center falls into my world from a CNA representative, sponsorship type role. I'm excited to see how this works. Obviously, good to know Susie has all this background with it. So I'm curious.
That's a great system.
It'll be an improvement from the current Excel spreadsheet model that we're
can only go up from
operating
there,
under.
Excellent.
Hi. Sorry for joining late. No, we were just in introduction.
Hey, I'm
real estate.
Dan Hurley with EMS.
I'm Jordan. Very nice to meet you. No, we weren't.
All right.
And I'm Erin Rulova. I'm the facilities manager. I probably will be just covering the reception or the conference center desk when Susie or Melissa are out. So.
Okay, great. All right. My name is Dan Hurley, Vice President of Sales with EMS. I've been with the organization for about 11 years, working with a lot of companies, organizations like CNA to help them with their not only high-touch concierge conference center areas, but also a lot of their workplace initiatives as well.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. I'm Billy Hawkins. I'm the director of our solutions consulting department. Essentially, we live in the sales world side by side with our sales executives to assist in solutioning for the product. And as you know, it's highly configurable, so we make sure that we get the right solution for the right organization. I live mostly on the enterprise side of accounts, and I've been with EMS for 6 years. Excellent. My name is Jordan Hilgers. I will be CNA's dedicated account executive moving forward. I've been with EMS for about 3 years, specialized with working with organizations, financial services, professional services, legal and healthcare specifically. And I want to thank everyone for their time today. What a beautiful office. We really appreciate you letting us come on site as well. In regards to our presentation, it's not very slide heavy, but we do have a couple of slides that we're going to push through on the front end before we jump into the live product demonstration, which will be led by Billy. In regards to today's agenda, we're going to briefly go over the identified needs I've been able to capture from Julie and team. Then we will go over a quick company overview of EMS, show you a visual depiction of our EMS workplace platform, commit a majority of today's meeting to the live product demonstration. We always have this placeholder for questions and next steps, but we do encourage you to ask questions and engage throughout the meeting, so please do so. Moving on from agenda, a little bit about EMS software.
We were founded in 1986. Our first customer is still with us 32 plus years later. To build on that, we are particularly prideful of our 98% customer retention rate. I've listed some select partners that have been able to solve the difficult pain of scheduling space and resources by implementing EMS. And then also we kind of always highlight that non-proprietary enterprise platform. You'll often hear us say non-rigid open architecture, but ultimately when you're working with organizations such as Deloitte, Accenture, potentially CNA, really important to our customers that we have that open architecture because they have typically very complex global footprints with unique needs. Moving on from EMS software, here's just kind of the identified needs that we've been able to capture, and this is just from 30,000 feet. Goal, find a modern single solution to manage space and resources. Space is primarily around conference rooms, how users can reserve or request a conference space. Services and resources such as catering and AV and how those can be requested and managed and approved through EMS. We'll be diving into the admin experience and then also some key reporting functionality, including space utilization. Go ahead, Dan.
Was there anything, let's throw that list back up. I always, we try to listen during these processes, but was there anything we missed, anything else that was really important to CNA that you guys didn't see on this list?
I don't think so. I'm sure, in our current environment that we have the 7th floor rooms restricted to only the ability to book through the team.
Yep.
Whereas all the other conference rooms on the other floors are open.
Yeah.
But what would be advantageous is for at least folks to see maybe the availability on 7, but still not be able to book.
Yes.
Yep.
Which would, certainly enhance what we have. And then I'd heard that utilization across all the rooms would be something potentially that could be included in this, where we would really get a good understanding of what's happening with the 10-person rooms.
Exactly, and you hit the nail right on the head with the value of our platform. So on the 7th floor here, you're going to go through what we would call an individual, a gatekeeper, whatever naming convention you want to give it. That individual is going to say, okay, yeah, we can do this. There's some variables. What else do you need? I'm sure there's catering and all kinds of things that make some of these client-facing events whole, correct? So that's going to be touched by somebody that's involved on a day-to-day basis. But the majority of your other space, hey, if that space is available and we have a team meeting, we can go ahead and book that right out of Outlook and go. So you're gaining the control where you need it, but you're also gaining the utilization and the metrics, because although somebody's grabbing a self-service conference room, that's being tracked in the system, and you can see what your peak periods are, who's consuming them most often. Are they actually showing up? Because we can enlist a check-in process too, if that's of interest to you guys. That can be done from a variety of endpoints too. It can help you predict and what's going to happen, and then also curb bad behavior in certain instances if you have a high no-show rate for some of your high-traffic conference rooms. So you're exactly the use cases that EMS does out of the box.
And I just wanted to check, Elaine and Julie, are you seeing the web presentation remotely? Just wanted to confirm.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, moving on to our visual depiction of our EMS workplace platform, we broke this out into 3 different sections: use cases, points of access, and then system integration. So starting with use cases, that's just traditionally how a lot of organizations leverage EMS. The booking of what we like to call self-service conference rooms, first come, first serve. EMS is managing that inventory. A lot of our customers that we showed a couple slides back, started with the booking of self-service and managed conference rooms, then move forward to utilize EMS for, global hoteling initiatives. Managed space, conference and event spaces, as you can see there, video conferencing integration, services and resources such as catering and AV. We do have a visitor management component built in. Analytics, including space utilization and optimization. So reporting is a great strength of this platform, and then pricing and invoicing as well. Moving away from use cases in regards to points of access, we really provide the full gamut. We've got a web application, mobile application, room signs, kiosks, an admin interface. We also support an Outlook and Google Add-in as well. And then moving into system integrations, we kind of look at this at 2 different buckets. Integrations that we have out of the box, and then also that open architecture, non-rigid, specifically giving you access to a RESTful API so you can tie in an integration that potentially may not be listed here. Some of our out-of-the-box integrations include Exchange, Skype, Google Suite, and so on. Candidly, I've got a bit of an ace up the sleeve because Julie worked with us closely on the agenda. So to set the stage for Billy, we're really going to be focused on your self-service conference rooms, your managed conference rooms, services and resources, analytics and pricing and invoicing. And in regards to the flow, we're going to start by putting on our end user hat, and we're going to spend some time in the EMS Outlook add-in. We're going to book some self-service, request to manage space, and we're going to move into the web application, work through comparable workflows. We're going to touch on the room sign application, and then we're going to change hats, become administrators, and spend some time in the admin interface. Any questions before we kick off the live product demonstration?
And we love questions, so feel free to stop us. Any clarifications, any specific use cases or scenarios. This is not a canned presentation, so we can go left, right, up and down.
Perfect. All right, great. So what I'm going to do in order to do our product demonstration is I'm going to get into our test environment here. Let me minimize some of this stuff and get out of the way here. As Jordan said, what we'll do is we'll start in Outlook. Everybody's pretty familiar with living and breathing inside the world of calendaring. So what we've done for EMS is we've decided to create an add-in that lives and breathes directly inside Outlook. And what we say when we say that it's an add-in, we really do mean that it is a native add-in for Outlook. And the reason we did it that way is because we didn't want the user experience to escape the environment in which you use. So we're not going out to a browser, we're not making you pop up a new window, anything like that. You live and breathe inside your appointment making process. As we discussed on previous calls with your organization, I'm going to describe a little bit of how the product works in relation to Outlook before I actually go into use cases. So when I actually open up an appointment in any way, whether I create it from the calendar view, I click new meeting or whatever, what I'm really doing is just starting a meeting any way that I would normally. All we do is we add a button up here. So if I were to create, say, a conference room request where I needed, my coworker Matt to join me for a meeting, I'll just call this meeting test number 1. When I use the EMS for Outlook add-in, I'll make this a little bigger so we can see it. When I use the EMS for Outlook add-in, first thing you should note is that this can be branded, so you can iconize this to make it more familiar for your users, and you can label it something more appropriate, space request, meeting room request, whatever you want, up to 50 characters. But the first thing that it does is it knows who Billy is. So EMS has a bit of intelligence in the back end that says Billy's logged into his Outlook, so I know that he needs to typically schedule a meeting with services, and he typically lives in the 151 building. So it's defaulted to my 151 North Franklin Street building, and it knows that these are the rooms that are available for ad hoc or self-serve reservation. Those are located at the top, Collaboration Room 12 and Collaboration Room 2. And I have rooms that I can request, the Buckingham Fountain, for example. Now, these particular rooms down here are, as Dan said, those gatekeeper rooms. I can see the availability. I can request them, but I can't actually own them or make a self-service booking against them. So there's a number of different ways you can show availability. In this particular view, I'm looking at rooms that are immediately available, and you can see over here that anything marked as my favorite will always show up at the top if it is available. If I wanted to, though, if I wanted to give my users a better view of what space and availability is there, I can do what we call the schedule view. And this is very much like the scheduling assistant in Outlook. It provides you not only free busy availability of the users, but also of the rooms and spaces. So this is going to collect availability against all the spaces that the person who's booking has access to. That can be something like 50, 100, 200 rooms if you have a large building with a lot of availability. But we also tether or shrink those down to what's most relevant. So in this case, I have a good number of rooms here where I can see that scheduled availability and why it can or cannot be reserved. In our first example of creating a reservation, I'll stay in this window here. I can see that Billy and Matt are both available during the time period that I've requested. And I can also see the time zone differences between where my computer is as well as what the rooms or the locations are. So you see the different time zones listed up there, 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. for my computer's time zone, and 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. for the Eastern or Central or Mountain time zone, whatever the time zone is for that particular location. In this case here, I can see that Collaboration Room 12 is available, Collaboration Room 2 is available. However, Room 6/27-1, which I believe is one of your real rooms, is not available during this time because we're in the middle of a demo presentation. So that room is not available. I can, though, however, request the Buckingham Fountain room. And if I want to, I can even see details about that space. Now, I didn't have real pictures or anything of your rooms, but just know that if I wanted to, we could include information about the square footage, whether it requires check-in, how much setup and teardown time is necessary for that room, the setup types that are available in that room. A good example is this room can always only be a conference room because you're not likely going to take this table out and try to re-architect the room. Features of the space indicate that it has a Polycom phone system, it has a data projector and a whiteboard, and as I mentioned, if you wanted to include images, you can certainly do so. You can include as many as you want, and they can be things as simple as a picture of the room, a descriptor of the room, or it can even be something like a floor plan layout of the way that the room can be architected or set up. A lot of our organizations will do it in that fashion. In this case, we just use a simple picture of the room.
And for your managed space especially, a lot of my customers will go out, and if they have, I'm just going to call it event space 1, and it allows 5 or 6 different setup types, they'll actually take a picture of that space in each setup type and then upload it into the system. And then that way a user can make an educated decision if they want it in a lecture versus training format.
Yeah, the whole point of this is the work on the front end will lead to a lot less questions and, hey, do you have a room that could do this? Now, people are still going to ask you questions. You're never going to be able to get around that.
Yeah.
But you can provide a lot of information in a very intuitive way for people that like to consume that way and make a decision.
So for this example, I'll just go ahead and choose Collaboration Room 12 here. And by selecting that, it may ask me additional questions, or it may allow me to ad hoc or self-serve book that. If that's all I need, I can simply send out my invite. That will appear on my calendar. It will reserve in the system, and it will send out the appropriate invites to my guests. If there is, and on the back end, just for this particular meeting, since I didn't ask for any catering or services, it would not send any triggered notifications out to the catering teams or anything like that. However, in our future further examples, I'll ask for maybe a lunch service or an AV equipment. It will check for inventory and also send out a notification at the appropriate time. One of the differentiators in this product offering is that the notifications don't have to be sent out immediately like some other systems. They can be delayed until a certain point in time when they're necessary, or they can be added to a setup worksheet or a report that will go out the morning of, so that the users aren't getting inundated with too many emails. Before I move to a more detailed example, were there any initial questions about EMS for Outlook?
So on the calendar invite, when you say you can adjust within the calendar, this little, is that always sending out, and there's a toggle you have to hit to make, when you finalize it, it gets sent to everyone?
By clicking the send invite, just like Outlook, that's when the invitees will be invited.
Okay.
Yep. And then from future, like if you need to make a change or anything like that, this will work exactly like an Outlook invite works. If I drag and drop this to a different date and time, it's going to prompt me to send that update to the user. If I'm not making any date, time, or location changes, it won't send an additional update.
And one other thing to notice that I discussed with Julie is if Billy reopens that invite and goes back to the scheduled view, Billy added his colleague Matt Thompson before engaging with the EMS room scheduler, which again can be renamed as CNA scheduler. And it brought it into the system. And as you can see, not only can Billy see availability of space, but he can see the availability of his colleague, Matt Thompson. But you can also add your colleagues directly from within the Outlook add-in as well, which is nice because ultimately, I don't want to have to be jumping back and forth between EMS for Outlook and the native room scheduler to pull back Exchange free busy. And then also booking across multiple time zones as well, not having to do the conversion. You know, maybe you have an office in London or maybe just, you know, on the East Coast. It will simply do the conversion of the time for you so that you can simply say, hey, this is a little too late for East Coast. You know, maybe I'm going to move this back an hour to support these specific
colleagues. But at the end of the day, that combined view of people and space, make sure, because sometimes it's more important to make sure you're available before I even think about asking for any type of room. That's the view that you're getting here, all in kind of one concise area.
Our London and New York folk love the fact that I can look at a New York space and see that it's 8 p.m. I scroll down to a Dublin location and see that it's 1 a.m. and immediately realize it's probably not the best time to have a broad conference call. So it's a great little quick view to see both availability of the people, as Dan said, and kind of get a level set without having to do all the math. It's pretty good.
So today, everything but the 7th floor, as I mentioned, is self-service, and it works well. So the only thing we really don't have visibility into is the utilization for the most part.
Sure.
If we did want to just limit this to the 7th floor and the folks that need access, the AV folks, you know, the conference center folks, that would just be on their set?
Correct.
That toggle?
It's all role-based, so only those users would be able to have that level of visibility into it.
Okay.
But there's other components to it where you can just see availability. So you may, again, you have no access to those rooms. You couldn't even, you have to make a phone call or whatever process you guys want to continue. But they can see free busy, but they can also be privatized. So it could say private meeting. I'm not telling you what the heck's going on the 7th floor today. I just want to let you know that the space is booked from 12 to 5. You might want to look at another day and work with us on that.
Well, and like you said, from that perspective, you know, as many calls as they take, you know, can I get this room on this day, or what do you have?
Yeah, we have this
People
nice little
can-
area for you to go check that out.
Right.
Self-select.
Some, we can tell that, others we
Yeah,
can't.
I'm sure.
Right,
You're
yep.
still going to have people that want their hand held. There's never
And-
going to get around that.
And later in the demonstration, we'll show you a power user tool that also allows you to quickly view rooms that would not normally be accessed by the end user, so that you have that ability. So when an executive or somebody who's not comfortable using this tool needs, you know, a person to help them, it's a very easy way to do it.
Or, you know, when there's an executive that says, I don't care what's going on in the boardroom right now, we need it for an emergency budget meeting. You guys have the ability to move around the
Yeah. So on this view, couple things just to note, as Dan said, if a meeting is marked private or a room is a private availability room, we can show free busy information about the room, but still mark the event as hidden. So there's no way that anybody can see that except the host or an admin. And then of course, if you want to expose further information, you can also enable what we call hover, which is essentially giving the basic details. It's a session meeting 4 to 6:30. It's been confirmed. The group or the host of the event is Ian, but it was created by GeoMarcus. So you can see that kind of information as well. And that works great for the admin assistant / executive model, where you want the admin to control the calendars, but you want the executive to see it on their calendar. It's a good way to manage that, because then we can have that 2-contact model as well. Okay. Again, as I mentioned before, because I made changes to this date, time, or location, it gives me the option to send the update, and that simply sends an Outlook native update to the user to say the meeting has changed time or location. Okay. So the next example that I'll give you is what we would consider a managed space example. It's the idea that you can request the space. You do have 2 options with regards to managed spaces, and this is a business decision that you make. You can either create a request, which I'm going to do on here for Buckingham, where it will allow the attendees and the guests of the meeting to see that the room has been tentatively booked, or you can do what we call a to be determined room, which is essentially a way of, in the location field, saying, we're doing this meeting at 4 to 6 p.m., but I'm not going to tell you where it is yet until I get approval of the room.
Let me ask a question of the room though before we go down this road.
Yeah.
Would you ever have that scenario, or would it always be a phone call or something to inquire about a room on the 7th floor? Would you ever enable somebody just to make a TBD request, then you guys treat it in whatever way you want? What would you embrace?
Probably not.
Yeah.
We
So I
still
don't know.
want such limited space down here.
Yeah.
We'd really like to keep it.
So for most of your
controlled.
use cases, your request space would always be kind of a more white glove experience.
It would
like
be
I said.
managed by,
Okay.
myself and.
Then
the
Outlook
coordinator.
probably wouldn't be the best method for your end users to request that space. They'd probably still be sending a request to you. Okay. All right, so we'll skip that one. What we will do, though, is we'll do what we considered a complex meeting or a high detail meeting that can include catering requests, AV requests, services. Now, I'm going to show you the whole gamut of what can be added to the system. You don't have to turn them all on, and you can configure them to be as complex or as simple as you need. They can be as simple as yes, no check marks, or they can be as complicated as sub orders.
So a good example here, do you have any admins that actually might own a conference room for their executive that they can kind of book without having to engage with you guys?
Yeah, they're restricted.
Yeah, and they would add services and things like that to make it hold. So this is a perfect example of
That is a great
right
example.
here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll create a new meeting request for that one. And I will do to Matt as well, include him in my meeting. We'll call this a test with services. And I'll use my EMS for Outlook add-in one more time. Now, what this is going to do, of course, is pull up my favorites. And as I mentioned before, if the user wants to specify their own favorites, there is a button up here where they can configure their most commonly used rooms, their defaults, as it were. As you can see here, I have a number of those that are defaulted as favorites and things like that. Collaboration Room 12 is always my favorite, so I'm going to choose that one just for the sake of this demonstration. And when I do so, a new tab comes up called Services. Services is the ability for me to see what's available to that room. So you might have catering that's available to the 7th floor that's not available to other floors. You might have IT resources that are available to building 151, but not to your New York location or London location or whatever it is. In this particular example, we are adding services for Collaboration Room 12 from 1 to 2 p.m. and I'm requesting a delivery service. This can be things like beverage services, hot breakfasts, lunches, etc. In this case, I'll do an assorted soda service here. When I do so, it's going to check inventory and allow me to make some choices. As I mentioned before, these choices can be very simple, yes, no questions, or they could be advanced. In this case, you have to select a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3. So I'll go ahead and choose 2 options there. And if I have any special instructions or additional items like a diet choice or something like that, I can go ahead and add that. Pricing can be exposed or hidden if you choose to use it. It can also be associated to what we call client matter numbers, department codes, billing reference numbers. So if you are doing an external event where you're charging this back to certain cost codes, you can apply those as well within the system. It's your choice.
So given there's really no food service provided out of the 7th floor, but it's always brought in by a corner bakery or Boar's Head or whatever it might be, can you list those restaurants
Yes.
and say we'd like it from, you know,
It's a great example of that use
bakery?
case.
Exactly.
That would be more relevant.
Or could,
Oh, go ahead. No,
sorry, or could we just have like one resource outside catering and then we free type
Yep. Yes.
what's gonna come in?
Yeah.
I think there's too many caterers here to list all of them, so I kind of like the option of free typing if you just do like an outsourced catering resource.
You absolutely can. So you can create a yes, no toggle. Yes, I want catering. No, I don't. And when you do, you can either have a drop down of vendor choices, or you could have a free form or a combination of both. You could say, I want Potbellies and I want 7 sandwiches, something like that. Or you can make it just as simple as a yes, no, and a free form. All of those are options.
It's all configuration for you guys.
Yep. Literally, we've thrown in some use case examples here based on what we understand most organizations to do, but you certainly can do that.
So let's say you have a drop-down box and you choose Potbellies. Would the email for catering or the notification for the catering service go directly to Potbellies?
We can. So yeah,
Okay.
in fact, we have a customer that does that right now.
That's cool.
So they have our software puts a custom header at the top that says, this is business order number, blah, blah, blah. This is our account number. And then below it has the order request of what they want. 7 standard lunchbox sets delivered to 7th floor reception at this date and time. And then it emails directly to their incoming email.
And then would the payment for that, would you be able to make the payment through this
Well,
program?
we're not connecting directly to their system, no.
Yeah.
So they would
Okay,
likely
so they would
invoice
To
you.
their online,
Okay.
right, to their online portal,
Right.
right?
So where does it go if it doesn't go to Potbellies and some administrator or
Probably go
something?
Sure.
Administrator.
So this information, that's a great question. So this information does go as part of the entire reservation, but it can also trigger any number of different types of notifications. So an immediate alert to reception to say catering order has been placed, or it can go to a catering report or a combination of 2. And it also goes into historical, of course, for future reporting, saying this is how many catering orders we did in this floor, in this room, by this person.
Susie, today it's probably a mixed bag, right? Where you get requests for you to manage it, and then there's others that manage it on their own. About 50-50?
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah.
Well, and you could also do a default. So we have this thing, and I'll show you. So in our additional information area, we have these are what we call custom questions or user definable questions. Essentially, it's the ability to add your own questions, drop downs, multiple choice, etc. One of them that we do is here, and I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to explain why I show it to you. One of them is, do you need security? If I say no, nothing happens. If I say yes, then I get an additional question asking more detail about that, right? We call it a dependent question. I'm sure you're familiar with these. What you could do is you could use the same kind of idea to manage your catering if that's how you wanted to do it. For your people that don't want to get complex, you can just make this a yes or no. You can say, yes, I want catering. Don't answer any more questions. Or you could say, yes, and I have specifics as another dropdown, and that will then say, give me more detail about what you want. So for those who are used to kind of managing their own offering, you could give them an invisible field that pops up when they select, yes, I'd like to manage my own catering order, something like that. So in the same form, two different people that manage their reservation process differently can still get the services that they need or how they want to do it.
Can you make these fields mandatory, certain fields?
Mandatory, optional, and they can be validated as well.
I know just the other day you were saying that somebody had ordered their own lunch and didn't notify her, and it arrived under the wrong name. And so she was scrambling, trying to figure out whose meal it was. So being able to make sure, even if they're handling it on their own, they're communicating to the team that if something shows up, it's ours.
Yeah,
And-
I definitely did capture that somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's great because those particular, anything that you see here that I've toggled, yes, no, check marks on or off, those can trigger independent notifications. So if Dan here has the option to manage his own catering, by him selecting, yes, I'd like to manage my own catering, it can still notify you on the back end and say, Dan's created this reservation and he's got this catering order. So if something comes in that looks a little weird, this is why. Yep.
Yeah, and that's common because you don't want any surprises. You don't want to also have people waiting for their food. So if maybe using an outside caterer, yes, then you can anticipate that's coming, that's right in the reservation, and you're there to triage that as it comes in, and you know exactly where it needs to go and who's got it.
Yep. And for somebody who's also highly managing their meeting or creating a very custom meeting for someone, you may have things like conference packages, flip charts, whiteboards that you bring into those spaces. We can manage inventory on those with your IT group. So choosing, for example, a flip chart will check inventory and give you an idea of whether or not that's available. So on the fly, on demand, it will say, let's say in the storage closet, I have 10 flip charts available. If I don't have any available by selecting this, it will tell you how many I have left in inventory. And if I have none, it can also provide a number or a contact information and say, hey, sorry, we're out of inventory, but you can call AB Services at extension 437, and it will give you, we'll see what we can find for you or whatever. But all of these things, we'll check against our inventory count for those. And if we have imagery of it, if we have a limitation, I can certainly select that. And I can also limit the amount you can order per reservation. I don't necessarily want somebody to order 10 projectors, so I might limit this to a quantity max of 1 per order.
Well, the nice part is all of ours pretty much what's in the room.
Yep.
Right, yeah, for AV equipment, absolutely, yeah. But this also applies to extra chairs. It can apply to a buffet service. Pretty much anything your mind can visualize as to being brought into a room. We have a law firm where they do, I guess they call it tiered level of customer service. So they can ask for tier package 1, which just brings in coffee service. Tier package 2 brings in coffee service and notepads at every chair. Tier package 3 brings in a catered lunch and has a concierge standing at the door the whole time. So they have those, and they make that as an inventory count because they only have 5 concierge. So if 5 of them are in use at that time, you can't reserve it for that time period. So it's just a way of using inventory kind of in an out-of-box way.
And the whole thing here is these are little things you guys can try and experiment with.
Oh, absolutely.
But as you know, as somebody that's used it, if you want to turn it off, you turn it off. You don't have to involve us because this is very, we talk about a lot of use cases and stuff, but it's driven by you guys and how you want to flex the software. But if something is working, you keep going. If it's not working, you just shut it off, and you can do that without calling the vendor. There's a lot of vendors will say, yeah, we can do all these great things. We'll customize it for you. That's not how we do it. This is all within the confines of the platform and giving you guys the ability to make the decisions when and if to use them.
Yeah, and I think a perfect example of that is what Billy did leading into this meeting. Julie provided a self-service and managed space that was specific to CNA, which Billy's been showing throughout the presentation. He logged into the admin interface and made that adjustment in 2 or 3 minutes. So we really do, so we really do empower you to feel confident with the solution.
Yeah. The last area I'll just show here before we go into conflict and resolution management is Our attendees and visitors area, if you're interested in sending information to your front desk downstairs, this is a good way to do it. You can enter your visitor or guest information within the tool right away. And these are free-form fields, so you can create different levels of information that you need. In most use cases, it's a driver's license number or an ID number, the person's name, their sponsor, or their email and phone number. Essentially what this is just like we had today, where we asked you for internet access, you guys don't provide that, but in the event of maybe you have a guest Wi-Fi account or a hotspot that you can lend or something like that, you could use a toggle switch or something like that that would prompt for that information.
How are you doing that today?
We have a separate tool
Got it.
where you have to go in and register that directly links to the security desk.
Got it. Okay.
Would your system be able to,
So our API would be able to, if that service provides a connection point, but we'd have to look at the service.
So there's some potential integration possibilities, but it wouldn't be out of the box.
Yeah, today the host of the meeting is the one who's usually responsible for setting up the visitors, although I think sometimes your team gets involved. Yeah.
Is that a service that you guys are sharing with the entire building?
No, CNA has their own.
You have your own, okay.
and same with HVAC, like after hours requests?
Yep, that's an integration point as well. All right, so let me save and send this one off. Again, it's performing the same functions in the back end. Essentially, it's inviting the guests. It's writing to my calendar, so you can see my test of services here. I'm going to mark this one in orange so we can see it. And then, of course, if there are any requests that are going out for this, like a catering and service request or a validation, you can also do what we call a multi-layer approval. So let's just say, for the sake of example, that I had requested that catering checkmark. That can go as a triggered notification to a team member that has to validate or approve that catering offering. And then they can go into the system and say, yes, I approve it. And that will then just validate the reservation, or they can communicate back to me and say, yeah, we're not going to give you catering for that, for your after hours beer event or something. Okay. The last example that I'll give you is something that kind of differentiates the EMS platform from a lot of other services, including Outlook itself, and that's the idea of conflict resolution. Conflict resolution mostly comes on board when you aren't exposed to other people's calendars, or you aren't exposed to other room information, or if the room is only partially available for the time period in which you're looking. It's a big thing. In Outlook, if you request collaboration room 12 and it's not available all 3 of the dates, you can't have it at all. EMS can bypass that particular rule and give you alternate options. So I'll show you how that works. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and reserve from Wednesday here. I'm going to do a recurring meeting for 3 days. So I'll ask for a daily meeting every day for 3 days. That should give me until Friday. So the 13th to the 15th. I'll invite Matt again, fill up his calendar, and I'll call this with a recurring meeting. Now, when I use EMS for Outlook here, of course, my personal preference is always to start with the list view, because I only want to see the rooms that are available to me. I can also use the schedule view for this. But what you'll notice is that there's a new column added here called Days of Availability. Collaboration Room 12, always my favorite room here, is only available 2 out of the 3 dates. I can click here and see why it's not available, or when it's not available. In this case, it's not available on Valentine's Day. And I still want that for as many of the days as possible. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose that room anyway, and the system is immediately going to give me this conflict resolution manager, which is this right here. Essentially what it says is, we know that you can't have the room all 3 dates. Here are some alternate rooms that match the features you're looking for. So in this case, if you look up at the top right, the room filters that I have are these active filters right here. So what it's doing is it's trying to find me a room with a capacity of more than 1 and in the 151 North building. So in doing so, it's giving me these 4 alternate options as choices for that location. If I think that I can expand my filter, maybe I can choose another building or another floor, or loosen up my features a little bit, then it will give me more choices. But in this case, conference room 8 is a sufficient room for me. I'll go ahead and select that one. And by selecting that, I've now satisfied my recurrence pattern, and I can move forward with my reservation. I can continue to add services. I can finish any of that additional information. Or, and if I want to, I can even review the selected locations that I've chosen. As you can see, conference room 8 for 1 out of the 3, collaboration room 12 for 2 out of the 3 rooms, and The great thing about this, in my opinion, is when I send this off to my attendees, they get to see the individual rooms that have been invited. So they're not seeing both rooms connected to all three of the meetings. So if I look at this one, this recurring meeting for Wednesday, I have collaboration room 12. And then on that Thursday where the conflict existed, I have the conference room 8. And then that Friday, I have collaboration room 12. So very easily, your users, your guests, your meeting will see that they have to be in the right space at the right time instead of seeing that combination and trying to figure out which room is available.
So instead of picking one where you get all three consecutively, you just picked the one that you didn't have the
Right, I could have picked a 3 out of the 3 and it would have just,
Okay.
yep, absolutely.
It's personal preference, and what we're trying to show here is for those, in 3 days probably isn't even the best example when you like doing like a week or a 2 week. You know, this can be a challenge. You're in there for 30 minutes. You have to end up creating a whole bunch of complexity. This allows the people to navigate through that water really quickly, manage the norm, which is the 5 out of 7 days, and then take the exception from there. And a lot of systems, if you try to then cancel one of those things, it blows the whole.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
So if you did a whole week and one, you picked one that had all 5 days
Yep.
available, and you wanted the meeting finished early on Thursday, can you just free up Friday?
You can, you absolutely can.
Okay.
Without blowing the whole thing up.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about the conflict resolution as well is not only is it supported in the Outlook add-in, but also the web application, even for an administrator in the admin interface. So if you get that phone call and say, hey, I'm having a sales kickoff, it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the next 3 weeks, you can build out that event directly within the admin experience and still receive that conflict resolution.
You can let them know it was a really difficult thing to do to plan
Exactly.
that, but you
Took
did
you
it in
days
about
to do
20
it.
seconds.
Well, the idea is this really occurs more. I mean, granted, we get requests down here for consecutive days or weeks or months
Yeah.
in some cases, which we try to avoid. But,
Yeah.
on the other floors, there's still a need for some consecutives where they can self-service. And
Yep.
we have 12 floors of meeting space, so they can bounce around if need be.
I'm not going to worry about it too much. I was going to show an example. All right. So essentially what we've covered for the Outlook add-in is the ability to book just a quick and easy meeting, just where you're selecting a room, requesting a meeting with some services, invitees, managing your conflicts, using managed space or ad hoc space, as well as adding any kind of catering, AV, and services with configurable questions and answers. Are there any questions about the Outlook add-in before we move on to the web-based interface?
Question.
Sure.
So how do you do multiple rooms? Like, let's say they wanted.
Oh, that's a great question. Yep. So
This is slightly different than, we did web-based, we didn't use Outlook in Brooklyn.
Yep.
So this is
sure.
slightly different.
Same idea here. When I add my user, I create a subject. In my EMS for Outlook add-in, I can, if you as an organization allow you to request multiple rooms, for your users, then I simply continue to click the pluses until I satisfy how many rooms I want.
Oh, perfect.
So I can add as many as I need here. If I look in the schedule view on those same sets of rooms, I can do that and it'll highlight those items as well in the same way.
Okay.
So I've selected those 2 green rooms, as you can see there. And I can continue to add more rooms if there's any available. So I'll add conference room 6. And then, of course, it just updates the selected locations here to show you that you have all 3 rooms in that building with those capacities. And, of course, if you're doing attendee counts for each, you can divide those numbers out. So you can say, I'm going to have 10 in this room, 20 in that room, 5. Yep. And that will help, of course, your catering or services team to know how much, assets to bring in. And then when I do that, it just shows up in the location bar of all 3 locations.
And you can give that by user, that
You can.
ability.
Yeah.
If we wanted to make that just a few folks that can do
Yeah.
that.
Yes,
You want that in
absolutely.
the hands of the right
Right.
people.
And you can manipulate the services versus your attendees.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the service count, the setup count, and the attendee count can be completely different.
Perfect.
Yep, and they can also, I didn't show this before, but they can also be different times too.
Mm-hmm.
So, your event time might be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You might want the lunch to come in at 11:30 and not right away at 8 a.m. You can adjust those service times as well too. Okay, great questions. All right.
And then can you build in prep time?
Set up and share it on time?
Because,
Yep.
Yes, okay, good.
Yep. And that can be based on the service or the
15
room.
minutes in between, at least for these rooms, and then at least an hour for the multi-purpose room. But I want that like built in, so then there are no back-to-back things that would.
It can automatically be attributed to the space, so it's clueless to the end user, they don't even know, but it's automatically building that buffer in, so your service teams have that time, and nobody else can try to book on top of it.
It's funny, it's right on the line there, but our setup and teardown hours for this room 6/27-1 is 0.15 of an hour or a quarter of an hour. And we respect both kind of time formats. So 0.15 and 0.25 are actually the same thing. It's the funniest thing, I don't know. But because what it does is it says, are you doing it by quarters of an hour, 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, or are you doing it by minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes? So we recognize both. So essentially this one is saying 15 minutes prior to the hour we need setup, and we need 15 minutes after, or a quarter of an hour after for teardown. And that then you'll see here as these little bars, these additional bars here. Yep. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, that one that I just created with the multiple rooms automatically added those for me in this room, but did not add it in this room because that one doesn't have any setup. Excellent, great question.
Okay. As Billy's pivoting to the web application, quick question for the room. For your guys' event space, do you guys have any combo rooms where you have removable walls?
Yeah, we have MAD 1, 2, 3, maybe Pier 1, 2, 3.
Excellent.
You have to allow time for the walls to go up and down.
Yeah. Yeah, that setup and tear down time is probably, they need to be 30 minutes versus 15 for those. Yeah, or an hour. Okay, yeah, we can.
Somebody actually has to come do that, or?
Yeah. Apparently they figured out how to do it with one person. They
can tape it one time. Yeah.
I took the tape off for the executive meeting though, so I'm sure someone put it back on.
Yeah.
They did put it back right away.
Normally it was one with a key and one with the button on the other side.
But that's that knowledge of what to do is inside your head that, you know, the system is gonna have a lot of good information, but you still know that, hey, we need a little extra time on this based on the tape.
You should just remove that product.
Okay.
Real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Jim, I know looks like you're taking off. Did you have any questions or anything along those lines?
The expert.
Thank you for your time. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
You guys are the experts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Where are you headed?
New York.
All right, have a safe flight.
Gives me a little vertigo. Beautiful view. Yeah, I'm just not used to being up this high. I started to walk that way, got a little bit of vertigo. All right, so with the EMS, the EMS web application, I'm logging in because I'm in my test environment, but essentially you would be in a single sign-on environment, which would mean that your users would never see a login screen. Simply by being connected to their computer, connected to your network, the system would know who you are, and it would give you an intro screen. Now, the intro screen can be something that you design yourself, which means it can be custom colors, logos, fonts, formats, layouts. In this case, this is the School of Hawkins because it's me. But of course, you can change your colors and logos and all that to represent yourself. Now, Billy Hawkins is logged in right now as what I call an executive admin role. So I have the ability to schedule on behalf of others as well as myself. So I can do things like request a premier parking spot in the parking garage. I can request a hoteling desk for a visiting attorney or a visiting user or even a guest of the company. I can create a training session for my teams. I can request services from concierge. There's a whole slew of things I can do in here that aren't necessarily Outlook specific, but they do enhance the experience for your users, right? But I can also do all the normal things that I did in Outlook. I can create a meeting with services. I can create a quick ad hoc booking. I can even do what we would call maybe a multi-location video conference. And I think because we've talked about booking a conference room before, I'm going to start with booking that multi-location video conference, just so you can see how the multi-locations work. And I think that was something you had talked about earlier in your previous example.
Is that pretty common that you guys are booking meetings across multiple locations for VC? Is that something you do?
So we don't really manage like the VC portion of anything in the conference center. That's all falls onto AV. So they kind of take care of that. So we're not doing a lot of those like internal, external VCs. But what we're doing though is booking a main room and then the breakout room.
Oh, okay.
What I was interested in seeing, like how to do, but.
So we can certainly.
You're booking the main room and having some ancillary conference rooms as well. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, well, let's go specific into that then. So
But it
what
would be, sorry, it would be great though if we could like incorporate like VC,
Sure.
then our AV team, but I mean, that's something that we'd have to pull them in on and get their opinion. But it'd
We
be great
have,
to manage all that in one location for everybody.
we have some technology that allows the, not only the conference room to be booked, but also the devices and the equipment in the room as well.
Mhm.
So to try to make it easy for that end user when they walk in, it is a VC, they just hit a one button and go. It's actually the device is being invited to the meeting as well. That's a big trend that we're seeing out there, is just making that talk about user experience, employee experience, making that in-room technology experience seamless is a big trend we're seeing out there in the market.
Absolutely. So in this area, all I've done is I've selected that schedule a meeting with services. In this case, I will do, you'll see here that I can choose my date and time just as always. A lot of people look at this kind of like a flight scheduling, where you're picking your date, time, and location from the sidebar. But what we add here is we add your Outlook free busy schedule. So this is a nice little treat because I can invite my attendees just as I did in Outlook. In this case, I'll go ahead and add Matt Thompson, and I can see our free busy availability come up immediately. What's great about this is I don't have to be in my calendar or Matt's calendar or anybody else's. I can represent other people in this view. So just like delegation in Outlook, I can do this in the same way. And we do that through a tool we call Act As. So in this case, I'm acting as myself, but if I wanted to, I could act as my VP, Henry Jackson, or as another admin executive, Abigail. And by switching those, I also switch my roles and rights as well. But in this case, because I'm scheduling myself and Matt for a meeting, I want to see our free busy availability. And that simply pulls from the Outlook calendar, same as you would see, free, busy, out of office, etc. I can also, of course, invite people that are outside the organization by typing in their email address, but of course I won't get their free busy availability. So when I'm searching from 8 to 10 a.m. At 151 North Franklin, I'll see the list of all the rooms that are available. In this case, my two rooms that I normally like aren't available, so they don't show up in my immediate list. But if I wanted to, I could see that schedule view just like we do in Outlook, where I get to see all the details. As you can see here, we also respect the privacy setting, both on the room and when the user requests a private meeting. So we'll notate that as private. You can see 627-1 is not available to me because there's a private meeting going on there. And that requestable space, Buckingham, is also not available because it would cut into the setup or teardown time of that room. You can also make that overlapping so that the setup and teardown time can overlap each other as not to cause any conflict in that respect as well. For this example here, I can also do the same thing in Outlook where I can click on the room itself, see the details, how it can be set up, and the capacities that change because of those setups, the features of the room, the images of the room. In this case, I have a little bit more detail. I have the room layout as well as the setup types that are available for that room. That's an additional kind of idea for your IT or your setup teams. And then I can also see future availability. So if I wanted to look at future days on just this room, I can see that in the independent schedule as well. We try to replicate a lot of the Outlook functionality in the web app as closely as possible, but because we have the power of a full browser, we can do it in a little bit more graphical way. And
So-
yeah.
So this would be when a company doesn't want to tie into Outlook. Is that what the web
Correct.
is? Is it
So
more cost effective or is
No.
it just easier to implement?
Sure. So the use cases really vary. In a lot of cases, some organizations prefer this only because they do everything via web form anyway, or they have an internet portal. It makes it very easy for them to do that. There's also the case of users who are just more familiar with a web-based interface. But really, we're replicating it because we want to make sure that we meet the use cases of every type of user in the system. This is a great use case for your admins who might want to book on behalf of a whole bunch of different people, but don't want to keep 14 calendars in their own Outlook. So that's a good use case too. But there is also, like you said, there is also use cases where people don't want to implement across their organization by adding another add-in into Outlook. And this is a great way to do that.
Two more things.
Yeah, please.
Outlook is Outlook, right? It's only as visual as the constraints of the Outlook environment. So this is more like a transaction that's Billy mentioned, like buying a plane ticket or a book online, just far more visual. It kind of pops. The other thing too is
You might have contractors that they come in for a 30-day project and they might need to book a desk or a conference room for something like that. You can give them extremely pared down privileges and a username and password to come in. They would never be tied into your Exchange or your Outlook environment, but they certainly need to consume space depending on what project they're working on.
Yeah, that's a great
There's
point.
a couple different use cases for it, but sometimes people just don't like Outlook and they like this is more visual, it's bigger, it's cooler. And there's also some mapping technology that Billy will show you here that's available.
Yeah, the one I like the
Just
best
a
is
constraint of Outlook.
if you are a contractor, if you're not familiar with the space, the system can present a floor plan and allow you to reserve and book directly from the map itself. So I can select that one just by clicking reserve and see where that is, or I can look at the entire floor plan in a view port and see what's available and what's not. So I can zoom in and say, oh, I like that office. Let's choose that one. So there's, like Dan said, there's some definite benefits to using a web interface.
Some people offer both. Some
Mhm.
people prefer to just keep it web. It really depends on your culture
So
and
it
your
takes the
environment.
IT component out of play, correct?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, I've since discovered that's a bit of a funky process here to try and work with IT to get a plug-in.
To get an add-in implemented,
Yeah.
it's a big concern. And this can absolutely be what we would, like, maybe you want to do it as a phase one rollout, and when you feel that IT is ready to help you implement the add-in, that can be a phase two. The great thing about it is once you configure one, you've configured both, because the user is replicated against both interfaces. So
And sometimes it comes down to, okay, yeah, this is just another vendor. We don't really know them. And so you experience part of the applications, and then there becomes a trust factor, and then you start introducing other things.
Yeah.
We've seen all aspects of this before and what's worked. And the bottom line is IT needs to be a friend to this whole process. But if there's hot buttons, then we can help you stay away from them and stand up all the functionality, alleviating maybe something that's sensitive eventually.
So once I've selected a room here, I can move to my next step, which, as we talked about in Outlook, is the Services tab. So if you are enabling any kind of catering, as I had before, I have those options here. To your point, the start time and end time is here, the delivery and setup, and I can also change the estimated count.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So if I invited 50 people, but I might want to have, a service tray for only the 25 that are going to stay through the whole session, I can change that number to that amount, and then it would of course reflect that in my order. Again, if you did have any visitor integration, that's where this would live. And this particular form that we've created here is requiring a department or client code. This is a field that you can, or an example of a field that you can make mandatory. It can also be what we call a type ahead field. So I can start typing a number and it will start giving me results to validate that information. I can't type in a fake number or a fake piece of information. I have to do something that's valid against the system. You can use that for department codes, for billing. Cost center. Yep, absolutely. So I've entered my cost center. In this case, I'm using Shailene Wright as my department. Or
But
cost
we
center
don't
code.
have to make that mandatory.
Oh,
right?
absolutely not.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, so that's
And you can default it in there as well. So the person logged in might have a default cost code. You can put that in automatically. It doesn't even have to show up for them. It might just show up on their reports. In this case, the system pre-fills some information out for me, but this is what would normally appear in your Outlook, right? So the name of the meeting, I'll call this my test meeting number 4. And this is where I'm adding it to my own Outlook and sending out invitations to my users. This is where I would mark it private on my calendar if I wanted to. I have the ability, of course, to make it busy, free, or tentative on my own calendar. And I can even do reminders just like I can in Outlook. Oh, I can't type today. All right, there we go. We do also support attachments just like Outlook. So if you did want to attach an agenda, your whatever your notes are, your PowerPoint, whatever.
Your catering orders and that kind of stuff.
Yep. So in this portion of the area, will go to your attendees.
That's going to all the attendees.
So this portion, just like Outlook, will go to your attendees, will go to your invitees. But there is an area down here called attachments, which will go to your hosts or to your catering teams. So we have 2.
A good example would be, the first one was the agenda from last meeting. We don't store that in EMS. That goes directly to your folks. That stays in Outlook. But the next one, as Billy described, could be, hey, we have a specific setup that we've kind of mocked up on the back of a napkin.
Yeah.
We scanned it. Here you go. I mean, that's where you gather the information.
And then if somebody created a request and didn't have that, you could say, hey guys, we need to know what your setup is. They can go back and add that into the system. That gets delivered directly into the reservation. You don't have to be chasing all these details and uploading them. They can use EMS as the intake for any additional information. It really becomes the one-stop shop for that.
But then you said it does save somewhere though. So
Yep.
like I can go back in and say, okay, this is what we did for the last
Yep.
meeting and pull that historical
And you
data
can pull that
from there.
historically,
Okay.
or you can move it to a new meeting
You
too.
can copy it. If somebody does, once a year, there's a big partner event here where it's all the bells and whistles. And we just recreate every year. Maybe we offer a different, caterer, but all the details and the pieces are the same. You just do a 2-click copy of that bad boy, and now you've created that new reservation out into 2020. But again, oh my God, this took me like all day to do for you, but you did it in like 2 mouse clicks. Yes. The devil's in the details, but the details can be very easy on the back end for you guys.
Absolutely. So like we said before in the Outlook add-in, those additional questions that we might want to ask, do you need security? Yes or no? In this case, I'll say yes. Where do I need it? I need it in the meeting room and at the 7th Avenue entrance. If I have additional multi-questions, like I can ask for additional information. I can also do multiple choice questions, just as always. These are just different examples of how questions can be formatted to match what you're asking of your users. And we just reiterate that cost center number here. And keep in mind, these are all labels. So I have it as department/client code. You can name it whatever you want. You can name it cost center. You can change this word billing information into, cost center code, whatever you want. Creating the reservation does 2 things. One, it commits all the data to the database, of course, and it also can apply to your calendar and your attendees' calendars. This is one of the extra examples that we like to show for some of our customers that might have considerations about the first time using the tool. This can be something that you populate with anything you want. Hey, if you have additional questions or information, please contact desk on the 7th floor. And then here's the extension. So we do that. You can also put pictures and stuff in here or links to other sites. That doesn't have to happen, but it's a great way of doing something. And then, of course, if they want to review it, they can always look at my own events here, or they can edit this existing reservation. If I look at my events, one of the things you'll note when I pull this up is that not only does it show the events I created in the web app, it will also show me all the events that I created in that Outlook add-in as well, since they're all in sync. So all of these different meetings that I did, the multiple days, technical meetings, my recurring meeting that I just did, I can pull them up here, and I can also see the status of what they are. So as you remember, that multiple recurrent meeting had a requested room, not a reserved room. So it's still in a request status. It means that the approver hasn't approved it yet. I can always come back here and see where the status of that is.
So just so I can make sure I have the correct understanding, if Susie gets a request for 3 days in the multipurpose room,
Yeah.
I'm the one, let's say I'm requesting it.
Sure.
Fill in all the information. I put the 3 consecutive days. I give her a name.
Yep.
I tell her what I need for food. Am I putting the additional, I'm not putting the additional attendees in that request. Am I doing a separate Outlook to notify the people of
No,
the
you can do
meeting?
it all in one, because if you're doing it as a request, you're still committing the date and time to your attendees. You're just not committing the location, correct? Like regardless, you still need to have that meeting at that time.
Well, if I'm viewing the calendar, even though I can't book it, I can see it, right?
Then
I would know that room would be available. Let's just say I know
Correct.
the room is available, so when I requested it, it's a given.
Yeah. So the assumption becomes that you're going to get the room regardless. You just need it to be approved.
Yeah, because in today's world, they'll call Susie, she'll hold the room, but myself, the coordinator, whoever, the host of the meeting, then takes it upon themselves to send out they can't, how does that work? Because they can't send out an Outlook meeting because they don't have access to the room.
So Billy, once Susie so let's go to the location. So
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think.
I'm just trying to visualize how that would work in this type of environment.
So
I'm trying to picture. So you're talking, this is if someone's doing it themselves. This is not me
Correct.
filling this out.
We're still wearing that end user hat.
Yeah. If
Okay.
you were to do it, then you would be approved.
Right.
So you wouldn't have to worry about the to be determined space or anything like
But I
that.
think
But
the
it's-
real world
it's
example
how-
is, let's say I call Susie and I say, hey, I need the big boardroom on the 7th floor for 3 days. We're bringing in a bunch of clients and who want that. You're going to say, okay, Billy, I like you. This seems relevant. So the first step though is they can come in here and they can just strictly look at availability. They can see if that room would be available on 1, 2, 3 days. From there, they call you and say, Susie, I'd like this. Okay, great. She creates a version of the client, then she could attribute them as a web user, and then they could go back in and add all those additional details.
So kind of like the delegation.
You've confirmed the room, and then now they can invite people, they can add all the services, and they can do that directly through this if they need to.
So they could still do it. So I'm just trying to think, I could still do it through Outlook, and just instead of assigning a room, I could just freeform it and say Buckingham Fountain, 7th floor.
Yep.
And it's not really interacting with a room in Outlook.
Well,
but
we would make it even easier for them. We would say this is a request for that multi-purpose room. They would have a drop down on the template that says request the multi-purpose room. Then they wouldn't even have to select a room or anything like that. They would just put in their request.
My concern is 40 people that I need to invite on my team.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's easier to go do that in Outlook at that point.
That's true.
Right? They're not going to be housed in this tool.
That's true. Right.
Yeah.
So I secure the room and all the AV and all of the food with Susie for 7, but then it's my responsibility still to go and invite them through Outlook.
And that example resonates with me because, for example, at EMS, as Dan likes to say, we drink our own champagne. So we use our software for the booking of our workspaces and self-service and managed spaces. And if I have a customer coming on site and I request for executive boardroom 1 and I have my services, et cetera, I typically, just with how I'm wired, I typically wait for our executive admin to approve the request.
Right.
It updates my calendar file, and then I add my on-site attendees so it's on their calendar. I could absolutely submit the request and have my attendees on it, but again, with how I'm wired, I just don't want.
Right.
I don't want the room to change. That's how I like to manage it personally.
Right. Well, then they're seeing maybe too much in the request through the MS tool than what they really need. They just need to know where to show up.
Yep.
At what time.
Yep. So in your example, make the request, approved, you get the confirmation, and then you just add them to the calendar file.
And it's a small subset of rooms, so it's not.
Is it the same set of people every time? It's like, do you have a distribution list for it, or is it?
No.
Oh, okay, so it's
There's probably a lot of regular repeat users, but it's all across the board.
Okay.
Across the company.
I mean, the bottom line is it's going to work with the way you guys want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and the way you do things today is the way you do things today. Maybe in 2 years you change, but the system will allow you to kind of play around.
And the more we talk about it, the more we kind of work through the setup. I think it makes sense to consider the web tool specific for 7 to start.
Yep.
And then look at a phase 2 where potentially we expand it to include all of the rooms and more of utilization and a little more self-service requesting.
A phased approach is definitely very common. We do that a lot where they start with the primary use case. And what's actually a good example with JP Morgan Chase, when we started with them 20 years ago, it was all about the concierge floors, and that's why they bought the tool. They weren't even thinking about kind of like workspaces and self-service conference rooms. People were just kind of squatting in those. But once they realized what the tool can do and they had the managed events, they said, hey, well, people are using these. We want to understand how many we have, and now we're going to get those in the system, and that was phase 2. And then the workplace, the workstations, the desks, the hoteling spaces were phase 3. Now they've got everything in it, and they've got the key analytics to determine, do we have the right amount of space? Are we busting at the seams? And they were actually able to understand they had plenty of space. They just needed to kind of reconfigure it depending on, what type of consumption they were having. A lot of the flexible desk thing is really big, obviously, for a lot of folks. I don't know if you guys are doing that here yet today.
No.
Yeah, and you may never, right? But that's your culture.
Right.
That's your culture. They're in changing over time. They're moving the whole thing into one new building. They're driving analytics out of EMS to help them make business decisions over time because they've got all that space.
So one thing that I wanted to add is we spent some time in the EMS Outlook added. I spent some time in the EMS web application. We want to stay within our swimming lane because ultimately, I know you guys want to see a lot of the EMS admin interface, and Susie, what that would look like for you. The last agenda item we had specific to an end user was room sign capability. So we just wanted to spend 3 to 5 minutes here so you guys had a clear understanding of how we can support digital room sign integration. So Billy's just going to set up a couple examples on his end as well.
And then I believe I can see obviously outside this room you have AMX panels. Are these standardized across the footprint?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then there's a variety of technologies out there. The newer ones take HTML5 page, which is just like a website. I think these are their own proprietary room card, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's either here nor there. We
Yeah.
can integrate with that type of stuff on the back end, or we also provide our own interactive room sign as well.
And before we jump into the room sign,
I
Susan,
just want to backtrack really quick. So
Please.
because the conference center is going to manage the space and people are going to have to call us still and like email them, we're going to put the room in for them. We're going to manage the services. Confirmations then,
Mm-hmm.
like to send them off to them.
Yep.
Could you show me?
We will.
this,
Yep.
or
We
do
have
you
that
wanna do
listed
this?
on our.
Okay, perfect.
We do.
Okay.
Yep.
Am I jumping ahead?
no,
You are,
I
but
mean,
in a good way.
we know
No,
that's where we need to get. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
thank you.
So the simplest use case example that I'm just going to create here is on my iPad here. You're seeing a representation of in the room. You're seeing a representation of what you're also seeing on the screen, which is that if somebody creates a reservation from anywhere in the system, whether it be the mobile application, the web app, or the Outlook add-in, we're going to refresh that information on what you see on the room sign, which is the item on the left here. Really, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to skip catering and services here. I'm really just going to create a meeting. Billy's meeting here, and I'm going to do that in the calendaring. I don't need any additional information other than who I'm creating the meeting for. So if I were still that executive admin at the front desk or at a certain floor, I'm still scheduling on behalf of either myself or somebody. I do have to do that department code, matter number. In this case, I'm making it mandatory, but like you said, you can make it optional. Creating that reservation here will then, of course, book that in the tool, but it will also now show up right here. So when somebody walks up to the room sign, they're like, well, why can't I have this room from 12 to 1? They can see that Billy's meeting has been created on that room sign. Now, if you have marked that meeting private or the room has private session turned on, they would only see that the meeting is booked and they wouldn't be able to see that in any other way. I can also, just like in many other room signs, I could also reserve the room by clicking a specific time period and asking for that space reservation within the tool if I wanted to. It's very easy to do. It doesn't really matter. It's just what I want to turn on or off on those features. What you see here is I've also configured the logo and the background. Those are completely configurable by your organization as well as the colors, essentially giving your branding on the screens. Depending on what hardware vendor you use, whether it be the AMX or others, you can completely make it your facade. We do have partners with like Vizix and things like that where they actually do etching on the front of their signs to represent your logo if you want to do that. We do also have some organizations that have room signs for private offices. So they actually, instead of the logo in that corner, they have the person's face or business card up in that corner, which is also an interesting concept. But the actual use cases are pretty much unlimited. And one thing I wanted to show is that you can also, and I'll put this over here, you can also do this in on a device in what we call portrait mode, where it will give you, let me just put this up to 75%, where it will give you what we call the room card view. So it's actually showing you the list of events for that day. These are great for training rooms or very public rooms where you want to see the agenda for the day. A lot of our courtroom system type organizations use this, where they just want to see the events for the day. So there's definitely ways that you can make this work out of the box for the tool you have already in place, as well as if you decide to grow in the future and want to add some additional features.
Any questions on the EMS room sign app before we change hats and move into the admin experience?
No, but this would only work with some kind of plug-in to the existing displays, correct?
Yeah, so if it's these devices out here,
ERF.
yeah, it's not going to be our room sign app. It's going to be their native application out there. that they
Everything
have.
then has to be
But we
replicated.
feed the updated information,
Yeah,
right?
we
So-
would feed the calendar information just like you see it today there. So it would look
Yeah.
exactly the same as you see it today. It would just be pulling from EMS instead of from Outlook.
Okay. That requires IT intervention or no?
It would.
In the level of connection that we do between EMS and Exchange would be very similar to what we're talking about with the web app and all that. So getting approval for connecting EMS to Exchange to get free busy information would be the equivalent of getting information onto those panels.
We could have
Because the panels are still people in Exchange, essentially.
And we'd welcome the conversation
We
to
would.
connect with your IT team. and address any questions they may have. We typically, we hear that a lot, but given the names of organizations that we work with, we are very comfortable with IT conversations, InfoSec reviews, and so on. So we're very accustomed to it. Help you navigate that internally.
This is a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely fun is a word to use.
There's a process behind it. Got it.
There we go, that's.
Something you're.
Well, coming back.
All right, so.
As a short term, say Susie and group could still just plunk the meetings in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So
like they do today.
Exchange is not a requirement for the tool to work, right?
Yeah.
You can still do it the classic way, as we call it, where you create the reservations in the primary tools here, and you send an ICS file via email, which is those little calendar invite files. You can still do it that way, which requires no integration whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
The difference is that it becomes one way, meaning when she creates talking to you in the third person, when you create a reservation and I send it to the host of the event, they can't alter it on their calendar themselves. They have to call you to make that change again.
Which is how we'd want it
Yeah.
anyway. So that would work.
So this is the expert user interface. Some people call it the admin tool or the desktop client. Essentially what it is it's a window into the entire experience, the entire platform. Just at a high level explanation of what it does first, there are typically 5 use cases or 5 user types that use this tool. The admins or the power users, which is the people in this room that are creating and managing events, managing spaces, managing approvals. Catering and services teams that need to see what events are happening, where they need to be, when they need to be there, and what reports they need to run. The report runners themselves, who are people like your space utilization folks, your facilities management teams, that may need to come in and generate reports. One thing that you may not have seen since you left your previous organization is that we've automated those reports. So your facilities management teams and your report runners may never have to come into the system once they configure it the first time. I'll show you that. You also have your configurer or your power admin, the person who would be adding rooms to the system. They might be changing capacities, layouts, formats, adding pictures of the rooms. Those are typically people that only come in once in a while when something changes. And then you have your super admin, and that's typically the person that works with our implementation consultant during the initial rollout to get everything set up the way you want it, to build your workflows, to build your user types, etc. So those are the 5 base users. What we're really going to talk about today is where you fit, which is those first 2 use cases, managing rooms and spaces, creating ad hoc rooms or meetings, as well as generating any of those additional reports that somebody may ask on the fly. So here in the book, everything is color-coded. It's nice, bright, colorful, etc. You can see right in the middle, there's this one called Billy's Meeting in blue and pink. I made it as obtrusive as possible just so that we could see it for the sake of the demo. But essentially, this is that one that I created in Buckingham Fountain for Billy Hawkins. It's Billy's Meeting. It is set for 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock, but it does have that 9-minute pre, so 9 minutes of setup and 15 minutes of teardown on there. I did that specifically so you could see how setup and teardown works. Essentially, it's colored light blue because it's in a request status. This particular view is for my approvers. So green means good, purple means private, dark green means there's catering or services, light blue means I need some level of approval. As you can see, those little handlebars or rolling pin bars on the sides simply indicate teardown and setup times. This is a drag and drop right-click interface, so I can move things around as I need to by dragging and dropping. It will always ask me to confirm in case I accidentally slide my mouse across something, but if I do so, I can also make that immediate update change. To your earlier question, if I have auto confirmations turned on, anytime I make a major change, date, time, or location, it will send an update automatically to the user. If I don't have it turned on, then I can right-click and say send confirmation to do it manually. That way I can make multiple changes and not inundate with multiple emails. Okay.
Yeah, you would want that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you color code by the sort of the level of the meeting? So if it's an executive meeting, it could be red, and if anything else could, be some other colors.
You beat me to it. So we can color code by event type, by setup type, and by groups. So different groups can be VIPs, executives, etc. If I change any of these particular display types or color types, let me just do that. You'll see that the whole map changes. There we go. And now my color coding for that particular view is set up for me, right? So if I'm a caterer or a service team, I might want to have these in very simple colors to show actions of what I need to do. If I'm somebody who's managing VIP executives and regular users, I might want to color code it by group. And if I'm doing event types, internal meetings, client-facing meetings, VIP meetings, I might want to color code it that way. You pick the colors as an organization. So there's 65,000 colors that you can choose from. You pick what colors you want.
So if we want to identify specifically meetings that require AV, so that folks from AV, when they log in, they can see which ones they need to be involved in.
That's this view right here. So anything in pink means it's an AV meeting.
Because my hope would be that we would have it, like when you initially book it, you'd have it like, let's say, light green as like a TBD.
Yep.
And then as we confirm, because we're going to start confirming 48 hours out, then we change it to confirm. So it'd be like that blue, but then AV could be pink.
Great use case.
You know,
excellent use case.
VC could be like yellow, those kind of things.
So what we do for that, and that's a perfect use case for this example, what you can see here, it's kind of hard to see on this screen, but if you see there's an outline of different colors on some of them. Oh, there's all my notifications coming in about my meeting changes because I dragged and dropped that one. So you'll see that like this client lunch meeting here is green, which means that it's been confirmed, but it's also pink on the outer edge because it has catering. So you see, I can show two different statuses or two different states of the meeting within that one view right here. So without even hovering over, if I remember my colors, I know that green is good, confirmed, and pink means catering. So I can see that that green and pink meeting right there is a meeting that's been confirmed and has catering. So
if it's confirmed, it has catering and AV.
Well, yeah, right. You would color
you
code
bold
them.
the pink.
And we've also introduced something that Billy will show you in a few moments here called managed services. I'm not sure if you use this at Kirkland. The managed services, I could come in and say, hey, I'm on the AV team. And rather than have to look at this and deduce what I've got, it'll just show me the 5 work orders that I have today, color coded based on, hey, this is approved and processed, returned to stock. This is whatever status you want to give it. That's kind of what Billy is showing right here. If he chose, particularly, is that all one day? You got a lot going on today.
Yeah, I'm doing catering basics for all buildings.
Just do confirmed. Why don't you just try to pull everything out but confirmed?
I have a lot.
Yeah. These are just, they could see a sequential list of all the things that needed their attention. They could go in there and print the BEOs and set up worksheets directly.
So yeah, to be what Dan was talking about is if I wanted to do things that have not yet been addressed, here's my list of items. So if I'm a managed services person, I can say these are my work orders for the day. I can simply choose and say, okay, I've approved it. When I approve it, it falls off my dashboard. I no longer have to worry about it. If I want to see the ones that have been approved, maybe I'm the person who actually has to manage them once they've been approved, I can make my dashboard say, these are the ones that are approved. I could even then, if I want to, I can assign them to people. So I could say, this one is ready for invoice, it's been requested, it's been delivered, it's been cleaned up, whatever the case may be. In this case, if I deliver it, it falls off my dashboard and it goes to the delivered dashboard for cleanup. Yeah. So you can do that whole workflow in the singular dashboard. That guy. And that allows the user to represent only what they need to see in this particular view. And they can set that view up once and it remembers them by login. So they never have to go back in and reconfigure themselves.
In a real world example around our managed services, which we don't need to show the slides on this one, is UBS. And for example, UBS has dedicated on-site catering and then dedicated AV teams. And in each of those individual sections, the kitchen and then the AV department, they actually have a big flat screen TV where they just have the service order management tool up, and they have it filtered specific to their tool. So the catering team, which only sees catering, but more applicable to you, maybe the AV team. I know you guys are catering offsite. So I can see there and sort by today and request status, and then I can take action on that as I'm doing, my other roles. So
that's a great point.
Just narrowing what they need to see based on their role. To make it as approachable as you can.
Yeah, AV is going to really benefit from this because right now we have to free type what their AVs are, or AV setups are.
Yeah.
And then they only depend on that. Like there's nowhere for them to look anywhere for AV, except people reaching out to them directly or us. So I think they would benefit so much from this because they can look at themselves and see what's happening as long as the information's in there.
Yes.
Captured correctly.
Right. Yeah, there is the human element of capturing the data, right? Absolutely, absolutely. So with that overview, really what we wanted to show is a couple ways that you can manage your spaces. I did a drag and drop already. One of the things that our teams love is that last minute call, right? So you have a VIP that says, I need Buckingham Fountain for my meeting with my customer, and you put me in conference room 3. That's not accessible. You can say, well, Billy's got a meeting in there right now, but maybe I can just switch you real quick. So I can go ahead and right click and swap locations with another booking, get that VIP's booking here, click yes to confirm it, and now I can swap that meeting. That swaps all the catering, any of the services, any of the notifications that might be relevant to that. It swapped them all perfectly. If they are Outlook attached or Exchange connected, it will also send an update to the attendees to say that your meeting space has changed.
Okay.
So they get informed that those rooms are now are different. So Billy's meeting is now in conference room 3. So I would get, as the host, I would get an update, and all of my attendees would get an update with the new room.
Yeah, and guess who else gets an update? That AV team who's leading that managed services.
Yeah.
Because now they know it's
notification.
exactly
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if I wanted to deal with managed space, and Buckingham Fountain is one of those managed spaces that we set up for you guys. Essentially, I can drag across and create a meeting here, or I can, as you're probably familiar with, use the wizard. So if I wanted to create a meeting here, I can go ahead and do so from 6:45 to 9. This particular room does say that it has required 3-hour default setup and requires AV assistance. We put that in there just as an example. You can, of course, put any kind of notification if you want one, but that's just to kind of scare people away from booking it too soon. In this case, I'm going to be the admin for this room, so I'm going to go ahead and confirm it. As you mentioned before, this is how you can do your layered confirmations. So I can have an external event, a locked, a private one, or I can even do it in stages, low, normal, high, however I want to do it. You create those based on your workflow ideas. Our implementation teams will definitely help you work out that flow.
I was going to say, you guys, we'll give you a list of what we want to see on there, like details TBC be the first one we do,
Yep.
and then
Yeah,
confirm it.
you
like,
describe your
manually after
workflow to
that,
us, and we'll build it out.
Yeah.
But just know that you can always tweak it as you go along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, the event that I'm building is for that 2 hours, so I'm going to call this my VIP event. I'm going to mark it as a VIP event as well. This will trigger special reports for anybody who's looking at VIP events. And we do support your type ahead, so I'm going to make this for Billy. When I do so, one of the things that you're going to notice is it's going to give me a little pop-up because Billy is a special person in the company who is allergic to fish. So it will let me know that maybe I need to know that if I'm creating an event on behalf of him. And then, of course, if I have any additional information about him, his phone number, his email address, that will automatically populate, but I can also edit that if I need to. Maybe he has a temporary username or a temporary phone number or something like that. As Dan said before, one of the power tools that are built into this reservation wizard is the ability to give the user access to control their own meeting should you want to. And that's where it comes into this everyday user. So if I give Billy Hawkins access to it right here, then not only on his Outlook add-in or in the web app, he'll be able to not just see it in his calendar, but also request a cancellation or request adding of services.
So here's the point, Mike. The big thing for you guys is controlling who gains access to these spaces. Once you've given it your Jane Hancock, you could allow them to go into one of the other interfaces and add services, add invitees, and do those things on their own. It's the whole point, though, is doing that at the point where you've actually approved it, you've communicated that, and then they can manage it the way they want. They couldn't do things like change the time and things like that. That would kick it back to be approved again by you guys. It's something that you want to think about specifically to the use case of adding additional users or invitees inside or outside the organization.
Yeah, the level of permissions essentially are incredibly granular. So just giving them the ability to view the fact that they have that might be enough.
Now,
And that's
let's show the
perfectly fine.
confirmation, right? I think that's one thing you wanted to look at.
Yeah, I just want to, yeah.
Absolutely. So our confirmation here, because we have this set to manual confirmation. Oh, sorry. So because we have this set to manual confirmation, what we're doing, oh, I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. So, no, sorry, side note.
No, I
No, keep talking.
Yeah, no,
great.
please.
We want
More of you,
to,
Yeah, really.
facilitate conversation.
The goal here is, of course, to give you the information you need. But In this particular example, because I didn't request any catering or services, there's no additional pricing or anything on here. But what we've done, and I'll just enlarge this a little bit so we can see it a little better here. So essentially, the header and footer information, the header information, automated central scheduling notifications, that's all based on departments, right? And departments can be configured independently of each other. So let's just say your department or your approval might say something different than the IT approval or the catering approval or another building's approval. So that's all configurable. Logos are configurable based on that information as well. And the level of detail that you put in the confirmation message in that groups and reservation theme area is also configurable. I have a lot of things turned on just so you can see the variety that is available. Where it says you have booking scheduled or if you have any questions, that's 100% header configurable. It's a nice little word looking thing that you can type in bold, you can type in different fonts, different colors, whatever you want. You can do that at the header and at the footer. And then the middle information, of course, is the amount of detail you want to include for your user. In this case, they've requested, or in this case, we've typed it for them, February 13th, they have a VIP event from 6:55 to 9 p.m. We're going to give 10 minutes or 9 minutes of setup and 15 minutes of teardown for a conference. And then I've included a terms and conditions at the bottom, just as an example of what you can put in the footer. Some organizations, if you're doing external events or events that require a signature approval, you can also make this into an actual contract form with a signature line at the bottom where they have to print it out or email it back or whatever. What I did to show this on the screen was just a print preview, very much like you would do in any other product. You could print this out if you wanted to, or you could actually email it directly. You can use the email button here, or you can directly report that right from here. So instead of print previewing it on the screen, I can just click email. That will then populate that to either a PDF or a full-blown email layout on screen and send that off to your users. As we mentioned before, with this product, you can also have the system do it automatically if you want, in the idea that the system can automatically generate this and populate it out. But it sounds like you probably want to make a whole bunch of changes to your services and all that first before you send out the final confirmation, in which case you would leave it as a manual process where you have that one-click confirmation. But like I said, in this case, we have the terms and conditions, the central scheduling notification in the body of the email, all the details that we mentioned before, and we've also put that confirmation.ics file. ICS file, if you don't know, is the calendar invite. So when we attach that to it, the host that receives this will also get a calendar invite for that meeting. So the great part about that is, the great part about that is you can create the entire meeting before you populate it on somebody's calendar.
And Susie, that's your way of sending out that confirmation and the calendar invite, but saying, guess what? This isn't two-way sync. You can't drag this to Executive Board 3.
Yeah,
if you need to change your room, reach out to me. But you don't, this isn't bi-directional. Here's your invite. Here's your space.
If something's wrong, call me.
Exactly, right.
I'll respond to the email.
Yep. And as Dan said, for adding information, let's say you're building this as a larger reservation, I might want to add things to this, like catering, an agenda, some multimedia equipment. I might even want setup notes, in this case, like a pre-event setup notes for your setup teams, setup requests, room charges. All of these are configurable. You can turn them on or off per room. Essentially, you're basically saying what you want to go as part of this meeting. So in this case, I'm just going to do a quick setup request. I'm going to say that on the date here, let's do it at 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. I need a podium setup. And this is that free form that you asked about before. Set up in the front of the room. And I'll go ahead and click OK. So I've now put that setup request in here. That will trigger on the report for the setup worksheet. So when they see their setup worksheet on that morning, they'll also see that they need a podium setup in that room created by Billy Hawkins, etc. We also track history on everything. So if somebody makes a change to that, you'll be able to see who did it and when they did it. But the great thing about this is, as Dan said, if I needed to copy this, maybe this is the perfect setup for any kind of VIP event that I always do. I can use this and I can copy it. So I can use my tools and wizards to create a copy of this at a future date. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly click copy reservation. It'll give me the option to select what details I want to copy going forward. So maybe I don't want to copy the independent internal comments that I made about that meeting. Maybe I don't want to copy the attachments because I know the setup will change. Or maybe I don't want to copy the setup request itself. I can do that and then move it to whatever new date I want. I'll go ahead and move it to 28th, and I'll confirm this one as well. And if there is a conflict, the system will let me know. But let's just say for this case, I want to overbook it and then manage it later in case it is in conflict. I can go ahead and next that out. That's going to give me any of the recurrences that are already available so that I can choose from. I choose that one. It'll make that copy. Now, what it'll do for the interim or just for the initial copy and all that is that it will create a copy of it here, right here, so I can see both my original and my copy. But I can always go into that directly on the 28th if I need to and start making my changes.
So this is where you just get the ability to carry things forward that are repetitive. You don't have to come in and do a lot. Maybe a change a food order or something like that, but you're doing the heavy lifting very easily. The system's doing
We have
it for
road
you.
shows that
Yeah,
are occurring,
for sure.
like 8 of them
Yep.
over a 3-month period. Yeah, boom, 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 boom.
And,
Not good for this year, but next year.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and as Billy pointed out too, within the reservation summary there, as you can see, there was a audit history, the ability to, track your comments, attachments. You have a true system of record for your event versus having to piece it all together in Excel, for example.
So when you just, let's just say there were meetings that you bumped.
Yeah.
By just doing that, ignore sort of the override or go ahead and override
Mhm.
any existing meeting. Does it send a reminder to say, check the conflicts, or you have to just remember to go to that week,
Both.
look and see?
So it creates a conflict report, and what it does is it creates what they call a wait list booking, which means that the original booking is still the primary, it's the one that's been confirmed. The one that's overbooked becomes requested or pending, and it shows up on your dashboard that you need to take action on it.
But we don't have to have that feature enabled though.
Nope, you do not.
Like we can have conflicts
Yep.
pop up.
Yeah.
We
You
don't
can
have
have
to have
conflicts. You can
By
have
default.
override, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would not
We-
want something
we
to
have to-
override anything.
Yeah.
Right, we have to
Yeah.
specifically configure the system to allow overrides. EMS out of the box and in almost every use case would never allow an intentional
Okay.
override.
The
Yeah.
other thing
Unless
you
you have that
can
wait
do
list
is
status.
Unless you have the
Yeah.
it's a waitlist Very status. good. Yep.
you can have hold waitlist. This might be booked for something, but another group said, hey, if this happens to get canceled, we want to be FIFO, right? First one in. And,
Yeah.
and you can have multiple holds on one space where you can then play favorites to determine who's actually going to get there.
Yeah.
They don't need to know that, but you could have 6 things stacked up for your most high traffic space and be able to kind of filter something in if somebody cancels or changes or needs something different.
The best way to explain the EMS admin interface is that's where admins rule with an iron fist. There is no sandbox or rules to play with if you are the super admin, Susie, and you can do anything, versus an end user who's engaging with EMS via the Outlook add-in or web app, where you've configured kind of a sandbox for me to play, and I'm an account executive, so I only get a request service basis.
So I think we have about 15 minutes left. Be mindful of your guys' time and everything you're doing. We appreciate you giving us. What would we like to kind of focus on the last few minutes that we have? Are there specific reports? We can go anyway. I just want to make sure it's a relevant use of your time, knowing we're kind of coming up against this.
I mean, I would think that your reporting, anything you have is better than what we have today. So,
Yeah.
and you have experience probably with reporting.
Yes.
As
Yeah.
far as, who's booking it, I think you indicated if we did make cost center mandatory, you could report on cost center too, like who's my heavy booker from most rooms to least amount of rooms or something like that.
Yep.
So the good thing with EMS
Person.
is that whatever you put in, you can take out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anything that you put into this system is going to be reportable or, if you want to run stats on something, you
Extractable,
can,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that your reporting is robust.
Good data in
Enough
is
to-
good data out. You just said exactly the strength of it, right? It can really tell multiple stories, but, we're talking about Jim's shoes. Is he very concerned about the utilization of space? Maybe Jim is never in EMS, but at the end of every quarter, Jim gets a report showing how space is utilized here at CNA. So then he and his team can make decisions on whatever aspect of that might be. Catering orders, service provider orders, it's all auto-generated where needed. So you can set it and forget it, meaning that person gets that report quarterly, And you never have to go back in and set them up again.
And in just 2 minutes on that, thank you, Dan. Quick sales pitch on reporting. Sounds like Susie's already got a great grasp of it. 110 reports out of the box. We have a custom query builder. So as Susie pointed out, we can report on any field that's in EMS, and we support automated report delivery. So if the AV team wants to work out of that digital to-do list, that managed services, they can, but they can also get a report at 5 a.m. automatically every morning saying, here's all of your services requests. We're just going to push through a couple of quick reports that we have in our PowerPoint. Space utilization report. I always like to mention AIG. They moved from Outlook to EMS in 2017 at our user conference. They said by implementing EMS, we were able to save $40 million a year. How were you able to do that? We had no idea about our space utilization. By making EMS the system of record, we could make data-driven informed decisions around a real estate footprint. They got out of 3 leases in downtown Manhattan and consolidated their workspaces and conference rooms into a single location. Moving away from space utilization, no-show report. If you enable check-in and check-out, very popular for self-service space. If somebody doesn't show up, it auto-releases the room back in inventory. Our customers pridefully call this the naughty report, find out who's booking space and not using it. Moving on from no-show, set up worksheet report. This is a great one for a services team where in this example, it's got catering, multimedia equipment, and visitors. So this is somebody who's got a lot of services on their plate. Ideally, this would be piecemealed where catering got catering, multimedia got multimedia, but for the sake of this example, we included multiple services.
Yeah, we use the setup worksheet as a breakout.
Yes.
So it's really divided by your teams or your groups.
Yeah.
This is an example of all of them combined, which you certainly can do, but catering would never see multimedia, multimedia would never see visitor management.
Yes.
So I would want this though.
You would-
I would
you
want
want
this
this.
report every day in the morning, but then AV would only want theirs.
Absolutely.
And you want that automated, to your point as well. I want that 6 a.m., 5 a.m. every morning.
Yep, it just, I'm not
And it
even
just
here,
shows
it just
up.
shows, yeah.
That's one of the
Or the day
favorite things that I've
before.
heard in our New York customers is that they want it to come in at like 4 in the morning so that when they're on the train, they can look on their phone and see and go through the list so that when they come in, they don't have to run the report. They already know what to expect before getting in.
Perfect. Another 60, go ahead,
I was
please.
to say, is there a survey capability that you can send anything out post-meeting?
We don't have a building tool for the survey, but we do have the ability to send out a post-event email that could
Okay.
have a link to like a Survey Monkey or some type of collection tool.
Yeah.
We just don't create the surveys in EMS that you can deliver them out of our system.
Perfect. And then just a couple more reports here, 60 seconds or less. Event type analysis report. How is our event space being used? Is it sales kickoffs? Is it customer on-site? This gives you a visual depiction with some statistics as well.
Again, that comes from good data in.
Yep, good data in for sure. Catering report. So
Would be something you'd
Susie,
want.
this is exactly what we were just talking about. I don't care about AV or on-site attendees. I'm a catering contact. Give me catering only. Moving on from there, sales by category, who's spending all our money or where's all our money being spent, room charges, catering, AV equipment, and so
And
on.
these types of reports also reflect against cost centers.
Yeah.
So this is where you get those numbers.
And that's a good setup for our sales by cost center report. Perfect, thank you, Billy. And again, this is just pulled from a demo instance. Looks like Dan Hurley's spending all our money.
He usually does.
And then lastly, these are some reports from GSK and BNY Mellon. And, ultimately when we're working with an organization such as, like Deloitte and Accenture as CNA, you guys have some pretty awesome business analytic tools. And so a lot of organizations say, love the data, but I like Tableau better. So you have the capability to export that and cut and dice however you prefer. We also have customer success plans where we manage this piece for you, among other items. And here's some reports on bookings across different countries. We've got a couple other ones in here that we don't need to show. Any questions on the reporting before we open it back up to a Q&A for the last 10 minutes?
You really
And
did
this
hit that in
is
60
all-
seconds.
I'll try to make it quick.
This is all set up worksheet, right? Then the queries would be something that you would help us also like
We
kind
do.
of build
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
But our support
Okay.
teams will help you with that too.
Okay.
So even post-implementation, if you're like, really need to capture these pieces of information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just queries.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the query, obviously, they're great standard reports, but you're always going to need a few outside of that, and that's where the query builder
Yeah.
would come in. We would help build those for you, and then we could educate one of you guys or gals to kind of become that person that can do the queries. That way you don't rely on us afterwards, and then the queries you can then make available to specific users that need those data. elements, right?
And those query reports can also be automated, so once you
can
create
now,
them, you
yeah.
can deliver them to people without them even touching them.
Any other questions?
Got one slide I want to show
Oh,
Susie.
sure. Go for it.
And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know. This is one of the slides that I wanted to show you both. And Dan and I will be the first ones to admit that our professional services team is a lot more talented than our sales team. But in regards to our professional services, we go through the song and dance of our product demonstration, but ultimately, you're thinking about how you can specifically configure, not customize, just configure within the platform to meet CNA's needs. And we eventually get to what we call a statement of work call, which is led by my director of professional services, where they validate everything that I've captured via discovery calls and product demonstrations, and then come up with a plan to how we reach your goals and how we specifically implement. And so this is kind of that view from, let's call it 5,000 feet of a typical EMS project life cycle. And as you can see, we've got our milestones, we've got activities and deliverables. And since I'm not my director of professional services, I want to attempt to go through this. But as you can see, this is where we really do invest in our customers to ensure that they're set up to be successful. But ultimately, if you need to go pull a report or change a room name or add a new services category, as Dan has seen with some of our customers or our competitors, they've got the cash register waiting for you. Okay, perfect. You can pair professional services hours if you want to know custom query, or if you need to know how to configure a new services item. Not the case with EMS. Of course, we've got our customer support. I will be available as well, but we do really empower you via this professional services implementation to ensure that you're confident and comfortable with the platform.
So obviously every implementation is different, but there's a lot of best practices that this group can instill of how you get over certain aspects of it, whether it's change management or whatever we need to help you focus in on. But at the end of the day, they're the subject matter experts to take it from the purchase to you guys being successful and live with it. So I guess the question that I would ask for you guys now is, I know you're probably looking at a variety of systems. What's the overall next steps for you guys? Because a logical next step, if you like what you saw and help us put together a budget for you guys, would be exposing you to the professional services team. So they would kind of say, hey, Susie, where do you want to be today? Where do you want to be in a few months? In your mind, like, what's the process here for your potential cut over to a system like this? What's the timing on it?
I'd be curious what your typical time frame is for, you've heard enough kind of about let's just say we start with the web and it's limited to the 7th floor, and we have maybe 8 to 10 users, with Susie and Melissa and the support team and the AV guys and, myself and maybe 1 or 2 other people.
Yeah, this is not, it's very common to start there. So if you're talking about specifically the 7th floor and that limited amount of users, this is something that could get up and running within, 2 months, probably 3 months potentially. Yeah. And that's the flex is really based on your schedule and your availability, because we can go quickly, but we need you guys to partner with us on that. And we know you have other responsibilities you do on a day-to-day basis. We have life, you've got vacations, you've got things like that. So is there ever a perfect time to do this? Probably not, but there is an investment in time that we need you guys to help us out with. So there could be a little bit of flex based on that, but we can go pretty quickly, because what I'm hearing is standard functionality. There's no real, strange things you guys are looking to do. No, not at all. So
You've got your use
we're
cases
going
pretty
anywhere
embedded
we go
out
is up.
you've also
And
put a lot of
Susie's got
thought
the
into how you do it
experience
today,
from the tools, so that certainly helps. I don't know if Melissa used it in other.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But you have a subject matter expert in
Right.
here that's somebody that's, well, from a day-to-day usage perspective, you're going to have to help. We're going to have to help with the building and the configuration and really the business rules. That's where we spend the most time is how does A become B and C become D. But you have a user experience that's already there. You know the screens, you know what it looks like. It's not going to be new to you, but there's a lot, probably more functionality than when you last used it. How long have you been here?
I've only been here for 5 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize it was that good.
Well enough to understand how it works.
Yeah.
And like the things that I want to like bring over here, to make things move. So.
You're brought in for a reason.
Yeah.
That's good. So 2 to 3 months, depending on potentially scheduling variables on your side. So
based on that, what are your thoughts about?
So we would, first of all, we want to understand, I think Jennifer provided a proposal on pricing, but I'd like to see maybe, like phase one would be the bare,
Yep.
your standard web-based,
Yep.
limited users, basic functionality. Then
Yep.
phase two potentially would be expanding it, perhaps where it integrates with Exchange.
Yep.
That, from what I'm gathering, is probably a 6-month
Yep.
process, just to be on the safe side. By the time we submit it, we have to get committee approval. The committee doesn't meet monthly. It's like every other month or something. They have to approve it to assign resources and funding to provide the IT side of it. We still need to get the approval and authorization within our own organization to spend the money.
Yep.
I think there's, definite interest, and, the goal is to really make this conference services a state-of-the-art, best in class, which I don't think Excel fits in that category. So I think there's, plus side to that. But, from that point, it would just be a matter of, once we get the A-OK, then we would start working on a contract, because we have to go through our procurement group.
Yep.
It shouldn't be, it shouldn't take that long, I would imagine, for a software services, SaaS, right?
We offer both flavors. We can do
Okay.
a SaaS hosted version, or we can also do an on-premise. And sometimes that comes down to your IT folks again, and their security preferences and how they like to do things. So Jordan can, set up those conversations with Billy as quickly as possible, because I think that's usually the one thing that can slow it down a little bit. So I know keeping the Exchange and some of the other stuff out of phase one could be a good idea to slow that aspect of it down, but eventually they're going to need to weigh in on the deployment method and the architecture.
Well, and I think I'm thinking I have February 21st is my deadline to submit
budget,
a request
stuff like that, yeah.
for IT support.
Yep.
Or assessment on how we would do it. So I would still want to do that, because even if, no matter what model we go, if it's sitting on a CNA workstation or it's accessed through CNA network, they're going to have
Check
to have
the balances there.
right.
Yeah.
So we need to get them involved.
And we'd rather get ahead of that
Right.
as much as possible. Our implementation services team, like you said, that's the biggest bottleneck, is
Right.
usually IT and security, just determining what hoops we might have to challenge and what security documents we might have to be tasked to fill out. That usually takes the longest.
Full disclosure, I don't think we have really any issues with the non-7th floor rooms. Not that we have issues here, but is room utilization something that we've had this burning need to obtain? I don't think so. I know that you guys have asked about it, but I don't think we get a lot of complaints about people saying, I can't find a room, I can't, kind of thing. So the cost would have to really, we'd have to do some kind of cost-benefit analysis for that aspect of it. But clearly, the need is for the 7th floor at a minimum. So
How many spaces do you have on the 7th floor that are schedulable, I guess? I know you have some combinations with
about a dozen, 14?
Yeah.
And only 6 are configurable.
Yeah.
All the others are static.
So this would be a static room right
Correct.
here. What you get
Right.
see is
There's
what
like
you get.
3 of these, 3 that are 12 feet, and there's a couple that are 6, and then
Got it.
so with those,
No,
and all the other rooms are all exactly the same. There's 2 10 seats, one east, one west.
Yep.
There's 3 smaller, and then in 4 floors there's 20 seats, 3 20-seat rooms, which to this point everybody can still access, which seems kind of weird but they're not down here. So, but yeah, for the most part, everything is uniform, floor to floor to floor.
Got it.
And, Dan, Billy, and I do not have a hard stop, but out of respect for everybody in the room and remote, I did want to point out the fact that we just crested 11:30.
Yeah. And I think that's it. That was, if you can, revisit and just provide
Some phase stuff, and then what we would love
I'll
from
work
you guys too then would be potentially to be able to schedule some time with the professional services, because although we could give some estimates on that,
I would rather it be a little bit more specific to what you guys are looking to do, and then they can chunk it out by phases. They can say, hey, this is phase one, and we could tell you what budget for phase two is, or we could just walk down that road in 6 months, whatever that might be.
Right.
We can start with this initial phase and focus in on that. So when you go and make the budget request for this first part, or do you want to go and get all of it, right? We're going to partner with you on that, but we can essentially get that scheduled pretty quickly here, because that's a key element, because that statement of work talks about what it would take, and it becomes a blueprint for the activity too.
So I think the quick ask would be for me to have something to submit by the 21st.
Yep.
To get that taken care of.
Yeah, we could do that.
It could still be phase one, phase two. I think we'd like to have visibility into what that would look like,
Mhm.
Certainly.
because that could rule it in or out pretty easily.
Yep.
If leadership's like, yeah,